This is a very dirty lens. This is Groundeffected. My name is your dad, and this video was sponsored by CA 3D Studio. I'm gonna be totally honest when I say to you this, my entire life and everything that I own is practically in turmoil at this point. And that's because I've been working on my studio, hence the new lights on top of my roof, which I'm still not sure if I like the color. Also, we used to go in the back in order to get 3D prints, but that's no longer a thing. This is my new printer room, by the way. My 3D printers that I use are over here, which I have accumulated over the years via testing machines, and I've just kept them. Like a hoarder, I have kept a lot of my machines. So I have a large selection of machines, which is great because that means that I can print everything I need for a model in one go. Also, you may be saying, well, you have made a room where there is no ventilation. Let me show you a little thing. First of all, this entire roof is the most pervious thing known to man. You can't probably see it, but there is literally holes everywhere, and up above this roof is a massive cavity which literally has the winds of Mordor flowing through them. But obviously I can't just rely on the winds of Mordor, and I have got this purifying machine which has a HEPA filter and a charcoal filter. Now I know that the charcoal filter isn't doing much, but the HEPA filter is obviously the important thing here. And I will tell you quickly what happens. When I print, I put the printers on and I go home, usually 99 times out of 10. In fact, even if I didn't, I would close this door which would keep all of the cancer inside of this room. After that has happened, it will create the cancer, this machine will absorb the cancer to an extent, and I will then only come in this room once that machine says it's acceptable. You see, 0.008, I don't even know how to say that, but anyway, that's very low amounts of VOCs in this air currently. So this room doesn't even smell like resin. Genuinely, I can't even smell those printers that are open, and I smell the resin pretty well. It's enough waffle, and I'm not going to go into all the details of the machine printing room just yet, because once we've done everything, I will show you pretty much how the room works. But for now, I need to get these prints off so that we can start making the model. And I don't even know where to start because I haven't used this room yet, so I need to go get my tray first. Now this is one of those things that needs to change because this is a bit gross after 4 years of using it for 3D printing. However, I'm going to still use it for now until I can afford a new one, which is maybe in a little while. I am a schmuck. I just took the prints because I thought that I need to go cure them, but I don't need to go anywhere. The curings are right here. Oopsie. For priming, my recent go-to has been this Kaleido color that was sent to me by Gallery, whatever, however you say it, but they make these paints, and I have been using them for a while, and as primers go, I'm so far satisfied with how this primer works. I mean, really, as long as it goes flat, and it does the covering of the resin, and it sticks paint to it, I'm pretty much happy. Just quickly moving on to some of the metallics on this model, I'm going to be using a method that I used in a previous video, which is to spray a chrome, which is from AK, I think it is, and I'm going to just spray that over all the metallic bits now while nothing else is painted. This way I can come back and sort things out. you may have noticed a little bit earlier, but you may be noticing it now that I'm pointing it out. I'm actually using the primer for the zenithal in this situation. That is because this primer goes through the airbrush really smoothly, unlike how inks tend to do, meaning that I used to have to thin my inks using alcohol to make them smoother, but now this primer actually goes through pretty smooth, and in fact smooth enough for me to use as a zenithal, which is pretty cool. I'm going to move on to painting the base though, and you may hear that my voice is a little bit cracky and my nose may sound a little bit nasally. This is because I've worked myself into absolute sickness. Building the shop and doing everything I've been doing has been a lot of work, I'm not gonna lie, but let's just move on and not talk about that, otherwise one person in the comments may have a fanny wobble over the fact that I spoke about anything other than paint or model. So let's speak about paint and model. What you may notice in the background while I waffled is that I was doing some dry brushing on the rocks of this base. Now I'm going to start out with a couple of greys and I'm going to work my way up to deck tan. I find deck tan is a really good bright color to put down that isn't actually white. If you used white, it would look stupid, but if you really wanted to push some of the highlights a little bit higher, you could dry brush white after this and still get an even brighter edge on some of your rocks. Moving on to the paints on the grass, what I'm going to do is paint them with a dark green, and I'm going to just come back with the airbrush and spray very carefully over the top with a brighter green. Yes, this will overspray and it will get on the rock next to it. However, if grass is growing, it's more likely that there probably will be some greenness in and around the vicinity of that grass. So that is my thought pattern. I don't care. Get over it. Now getting on to painting the base again. By the way, greys on their own are just never good enough, so I always like to come back with a wash, a shade, any kind of transparent color that you can spray into some of the creases and crevices. You don't want to actually cover the entire base, it's just certain areas, and what that does is it brings some saturation back to the greys that you have put down. I'm gonna paint those little handles that I painted previously with gold. I'm going to use a wash over the top of that. I'm pretty sure it was Ryklan Flesh Shade, and I paint that over the top, making sure it pulls in the creases. This is going to give me a little bit of detail on those handles, and then I can move on to painting the wood that is on all the spears, and also the little flags, for which I used red. It may not seem like it, but when I'm painting something, I have absolutely no idea how I'm gonna do it. Usually, I would work out a rough plan in my head, and I would start to attempt that plan. Sometimes it doesn't work out, and I need to kind of adjust things as I go. And what you saw earlier with me spraying Griff Charger Grey at the metallic pieces was me adjusting things as I go. And you will see this again over on the shield and also the helmet that is on the base, because I was also not happy with how this came out, and so I adjusted things on the go. This is the kind of way that I paint. Usually you have a plan in mind, but when you put that into action, sometimes these things just don't work out and it looks a little bit dumber than you thought it was gonna. For example, I thought it would be okay to just put this black around the rim, and then I realized that it didn't look okay, and so I just started splatting it all over it. But I didn't film any of that because that would make it look like I didn't know what I was doing, and I wouldn't want you to think that I didn't know what I was doing, because of course that would mean that I didn't know what I was. Anyway, painting this helmet and also on the shield, I used a bronze, which I feel like could have been a brighter gold, but I do also feel like this thing's going to be on the floor, so maybe the gold's a little bit dirty from being on the floor. Speaking of dirty, I'm not talking about your mum, but I am talking about some powdered pigments. This is what I'm going to use to paint and put around sort of on the ground everywhere, particularly over the pieces where the feet go. This stuff is terrible, by the way. It gets on everything, and when you think you've cleaned it up, you have not, and it will come back and bite you in the ass when it's stuck on your thumb and you pick up your model and you put a finger on the face and you suddenly now have a brown spot. So be sure to clean it up very well. And also, by the way, to seal it in, you have two options. You could just spray a matte varnish over the top, or like a matte medium or something, but also just spraying water at it will turn it into a paste, which will stop it from looking as dusty, which sometimes sucks, but also it will make it kind of a little bit more stuck to the model. A little bit. Not much, because if you wash it later, you're going to have a bad time. Let's quickly move on to how I painted the skin tones. I assume this guy is a ginger of some kind, so I felt like it was obviously very important to start his undercoating with red, because that is the color of a ginger. So I did that. I also left the zenithal, and I didn't put any paintball this time. I wanted to make sure that the whiteness, because gingers are quite pale, I felt like the whiteness of the skin needed to be brighter, and so I decided to go with this technique. It worked alright. I wasn't too unhappy with it, but it worked out, and let's just move on to the pants. We'll get back to the skins when I get back to the skins. For the pants, it's pretty simple really. I'll be honest, before I do this stage, I would suggest, if you were following this video, that you should paint something like a skeleton horde in the shadows first, before you do the blues. This is because leaving the white was incorrect. Like I say, white is not the correct color, but I did come back and tint this a little bit later, so that at least didn't look as goldy as being white on its own. On the pants there is a bunch of stripes, and there is also some stitching. You have two options with this as well, and those options are paint around the stitching to leave it there, or just come back later and paint the stitching. So I decided to go with that final option, and I painted over the stitching to come back to the stitching a little bit later. This also meant that I could change the color of the stitching, and that's exactly what I'm gonna do, but not right now. It'll be a little bit later. Just please hold. On the body, this whole section of the body, I needed to tint some of those blue stripes, and the way I decided to do it was using Griff Charger Grey, which I also sprayed into the white as well. I used some of this to kind of cover up the black shadows. It's a big mistake making black and white as the color. These colors are stark, they don't work as a color, so the truth is, tint that before you even start painting the blue. Just trust me when I tell you that. And let's move on to painting this belt on this dude. Now, one thing about contrast paints is that if you have a load of shade, like for example the white over the black, and you put a contrast paint down, they are quite transparent. Not all of them, but a lot of them are. So once it dries, it gives you a little bit of texture, and for leather, this really works out very well. He has a big circular buckle that is holding his pants up, and I painted that with a dark silver. Here is where I painted the stitching, and I used deck tan for this because, do you remember when I said that the white was a different color and it was not correct? Notice how the deck tan looks whiter than the actual white. This is not because the white is not white. I don't actually know how to explain this, but basically the white has been tinted a little bit, and the deck tan will look whiter than it, but it is actually not whiter than it. And if you now used white as a highlight, it would be, oh, I don't know how to explain it, but if you can see the colors are different, that's because deck tan's more greeny yellow and the white is actually white, which is the missing of color. And let's just move on to painting the horns, which I used deck tan for. Surprisingly, of course, we would not expect me to use this much deck tan ever. Let's move away from deck tan and let's start painting some skin tones, and I'm going to use some Guilliman flesh to paint some of the shadows in this guy. You will notice that he used absolutely no orcish dermis in this model at all. So if you are wondering about skin tone colors and you could not find orcish dermis, maybe this is a tone or a technique that you could possibly use for one of your models. I will say this is a little bit more desaturated than usual, but I felt like the skins had to match that vibe that I kind of messed up by painting the white on the pants. Do you see how all of this comes back? In the end, if you make a mistake, you've got to kind of roll with the punches and just work with it. I want to show you quickly here for the highest highlights. I always put a little bit of white ink into the last skin tone that I use, and then I water that down quite a bit to spray that over the highlight areas. And these are like specular highlights. They're little balls of light that hit each rounded object on the body. It's pretty simple really. And now because I did that, I desaturated everything so much more, so I came back with some Guilliman flesh again, but this time a little bit more targeted to kind of shape around the muscles. Each and every individual muscle kind of gets like a little shadow from this color. I know that I've left this a little bit late in the video, but you may be wondering where this model comes from. I did mention in the beginning this video was sponsored by CA 3D Studios. They are a Patreon over on Patreon that create some incredible models. Honestly, they have a large amount of really awesome artists that work with them, and every month they create some absolutely incredible models. This model is part of a diorama. You get Asterix, Obelix, and the dog, can't remember his name, but you get that entire diorama to either build as singular individual characters or as a full diorama for yourself. This is not all, by the way. This model comes from a diorama pack which they are calling a super pack, which has 20 dioramas in it. I'm also told that it is available to all VIP supporters, and anyone who joins on the VIP level tier on their Patreon can just message them on Patreon and get this pack for themselves. Of course, there will be a link for this in the description, and if you don't go and check it out, you are 100% missing out on a massive deal of some incredible models. Go and check out the link in the description. It is the only and first thing that is in the description that is a link to a model, so don't ask me where it is, it's there. Thank you so much, CA 3D Studios, for sponsoring another video. Let's carry on painting the things that are in this dude's hand, which is, I'm pretty sure, a helmet of some kind. Well, it looks like a helmet, so it obviously has to be. I painted that with just pure silver, and then I painted the little bristles of it red. Now, of course, I did not put any more detail into this. Time was a ticking. I'm going to be honest, I was finishing this model at 6 o'clock in the evening of yesterday, and I still had to edit this video. I did decide though that I'm going to do the hairs. I was not going to do the hairs, but I figured I'd take a massive risk and dry brush them. If this went wrong, I was going to have to restart that entire body again, but I was prepared to take that risk, and it seemed to work out alright. It's not perfect, and ideally I would like to do that and then go back in and brush a couple of the extra hairs just to really make sure that I was in control of exactly where the paint laid. Now, for his eyes, the original comic books of these dudes, they don't really have colors and things like that. They just have a black sort of mass where the eye, pupil, iris, everything is just one. And so I figured I would stay true to that and do exactly that, particularly because the eyes are quite small on this model, so it made it easier for me to do that. I'm gonna then dry brush a little bit of a brighter reddy brown onto the hair, just because you can't leave the hair a simple one color. You can actually, as long as it's painted nice and clean, you can, and a shadow would usually work. I can then put the head on this model and also the massive egg-shaped rock onto this model and call it done. As we come to the final reveal of yet another Groundeffected video, I want to say a massive thank you. Yes, you can see the creme fraiche that I needed to buy for my dinner in the picture. That is because genuinely time has not been on my side, and I had no choice but to go and collect this at the same time as painting this before I needed to go home, which is pretty crazy. I don't know why that's crazy, but I figured I would say it was crazy because my words are hard to come out of my mouth at this point, because it's been a long few weeks. Genuinely, it's been a long few weeks, but I have never been more happy in my life. I'm so excited to make more future content, and I'm so excited to use my new studio, well, my old studio that's been repainted to look new, and I just can't wait to make more stuff. I'm so glad that you are watching this video, and if you have, then of course, thank you very much. There is a way to support me. If you want to see more of this content and more content in the future, well then go check out my Patreon. There is a link for that in the description, and of course you will get color palettes, and you'll also get a bunch of behind the scenes videos. You mostly get to know what the models are before I paint them. That is when I'm not too busy to tell you that. Other than that, this is it. This is the end of the video. A massive thank you to everybody, including my Patreons, and thank you to the sponsors of this video. It's time for me to crawl into a hole somewhere, and perhaps if you didn't like anything you saw, well, I don't care. Now you probably should just f*** off.